Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. Welcome to the 10th and final episode of our free weekly live webinars brought to you by the Football Business Academy in partnership with SoccerX. My name is Christian Dobrev. I'm the Chief Partnerships Officer at the FBA, and I will be moderating this webinar. As always, I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who tuned in last week for the fascinating webinar on how football governance has been affected by COVID-19. With the likes of Philippe Mojo, Amanda van der Voort, Alberto Colombo, and Stuart Ramalingam. As always, if you've missed it, don't worry. You can always check it out on our YouTube channel afterwards. Or if you prefer the audio version, connect to our Apple Podcast or Spotify channels. For those of you who are new and hadn't heard of the FBA before, we're a Swiss-based football business educational institution, and we run a professional master degree in football business, as well as a number of tailor-made certificates around the world. Throughout this webinar series, we've gathered numerous football industry experts who share different perspectives on how COVID-19 has affected our industry. Since today is our last webinar in this series, and since many competitions are restarting, we wanted to look ahead and find an answer to the question, will COVID-19 boost innovation in football? And we'll try to look at innovation from different perspectives. Sure, we'll look at it from a technological perspective, but after 2 decades of relentless growth, which saw the football industry essentially unaffected even by the 2008 financial crisis, this pandemic surely did manage to expose our industry's weaknesses. So perhaps more importantly, we'll look at innovation from a perspective of strategic thinking, of processes, and of stakeholder engagement. So for this exciting debate, we've gathered some forward-thinking experts, and it's my great pleasure to welcome them to you today. To start, we have Esteban Granero, who is the CEO of Olocip, although most of you might know him better for his career as a professional football player, having passed through clubs such as Real Madrid, QPR, Espanyol, Real Sociedad, or indeed most recently Marbella. And it's because of this experience as a player that he set up this artificial intelligence company, which uses data to analyze, predict, and provide knowledge to optimize decision-making processes. Next, we have Cristiano Vieira, who's the Innovation and Business Development Manager at Benfica, Portugal's most successful football team. Then it's also my pleasure to introduce Andrew Cooke, who is the General Counsel at eSports giant Fnatic. And last but not least, we have Pedro Mestriner, who is the CEO of Horizm, the world's first and leading digital asset pricing platform for sports and entertainment. Welcome to all 4 of you. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And for what will be a very interesting discussion with different topics covered, I would like to start with Esteban. Esteban, you're obviously a player as well, but also a businessman. So you're living this unprecedented times from 2 perspectives, right? And one of them, I guess, very importantly, is especially in the context of many competitions starting again, is this concern that football clubs and players usually have with regards to injuries. But now maybe even more so, because obviously it's been a long lockdown. You know, some players haven't seen each other for 2 or 3 months, haven't played together, haven't practiced, different drills, haven't played the game, of course. How advanced are clubs on tracking performance data and adopting preventive measures when it comes to avoiding injuries?
Well, first of all, hello everybody who's here in this webinar, and hello to you, Christian, and hello to my teammates. So yes, injuries, of course, is a key topic in football. Clubs are getting better and better. We have one very good example here with Benfica. Cristiano from Benfica will know, because Benfica is one of the top clubs driven data in Europe, and of course clubs are doing a very good job with trying to collect more data, and of course trying to collect better data. So after this, we have identified that even in the best clubs, you need to have this service from AI to them to get the data ready to be driven by AI. This kind of AI ready data, that is the only data that can be used to make these predictions we are aiming to. And this kind of predictions is what will give you this lower uncertainty to make better decisions about injury. As soon as you can get the analysis from descriptive analysis, I mean from visualization of data and physical data, if you can transport this analysis into predictive analysis in order to predict the injury, and also into prescriptive in order to use transparent models to analyze not only the risk of injury, but also what variables have influence in this risk. As soon as you can get this artificial intelligence technology, you will reduce uncertainty in a huge point. And of course, you have to start working from data. In this kind of situation, like the one we have now, of course, artificial intelligence can or must be very important, because if we can reduce uncertainty into regular situations, this kind of situation with bigger uncertainty, artificial intelligence must be even more important.
Okay, very, very exciting. Cristiano, another key concern, obviously, for football clubs is how they engage with fans, right? It's arguably their second most important stakeholder after the players. And during the lockdown, obviously, you've had to find new ways maybe to engage with your fans, right? And I'm guessing that the future also is very uncertain, because you don't know how long we will be able to play without the fans in the stadium, right? And I guess from an innovation perspective, if you look at how to continue engaging with their fans, I guess you don't have all the answers right now yet, right? But from what you've done, what you've tried over the past couple of months, what can you tell us, and what kind of things are you planning to potentially implement over the next few months that you believe could work well in this situation?
Yeah, this is something completely new for us and all the clubs in the world. So nobody have the solution for this case. We are trying to have some meetings during this quarantine to find some solutions. But I think the innovation will have a really important position for all the clubs in the world right now. I think in terms of innovation and technology, I compare this moment that we live with the moment of war. Because it's usually in times of war that were the greatest technological advantage, and where the tools were invented to greatly change people's lives. And today we are not in a war, but we are facing a virus that forced the world to stop. All the football stopped right now, nobody is playing. So this crisis constitutes a huge challenge for the football industry, and this will force us to rethink the whole system, where technologies and interaction mechanisms will be created to find new solutions for the fans and for everyone. So I think this is the perfect time to imagine new platforms, new ways to engage the fans, new ways to connect the fans. And the football have something unique, something that the other industries, they don't have. That is the emotional connection that manages millions of people around the world. So usually a person do not fall in love with a company, but football creates a very strong emotional connection with people, a feeling of love for the club. And because that, many companies want to connect with football industry to try to enter in this emotional territory of millions of fans, because normally you don't fall in love with Amazon, you don't fall in love with another industries or companies, but football is something that moves millions and millions of fans. And this is something unique that we have, and we need to take advance with that to connect with our fans. So having as much as fun engagement right now, it's really important for us to be connected with our fans, with our sponsors, to make sure they don't go in a different way right now. So, and in my opinion, this will not only affect the clubs financially, but also psychological aspects, because players, they are not used to play in an empty stadium, because it's really different when a player plays in full stadium or empty stadium. For them, they don't have the motivational impact of the fans. And many times, like imagine every good player, when they make a great play, they like to feel the fans, they like to feel their support. And this is something that they will not have right now. And I'm sure many companies will create some solutions where the football players can feel the support of their fans when they play at home and even away. And that is something that will affect also the fans, because when you see games on TV, this will affect the visible and audible emotion of the game that is very important for who follow the games. This is something that has to be working with the fans, because right now, as I said before, we are not ready for that, and we need to connect as much as we can with the fans, and we need to find new solutions to connect with them during the games, before the games, after the games, because right now this will be a completely different scenario that what we experienced until now. And this is a new situation, and it's really important to keep the fans and the players motivated. And those unique circumstances bring opportunity to innovate, to rethink policies, and to resize priorities. So right now, I'm sure thousands of innovation companies are working really close with many teams to develop and create new ideas, because every team wants to be in the pole position or creating innovation solutions and new ideas for the beginning of the games and for the next season. Because right now I think that no club has the magic formula for the success and how to overcome this crisis in the short term. So we will all suffer, all the clubs will suffer a lot, but in my opinion, innovation will be something precious for clubs to pass this situation. Benfica right now, we are trying to work as much closer as you can with the fans. We develop our platform Bplay before the virus, and right now we gave a free access for all our fans to connect with us, where they can have exclusive content from the players, the trainings, their normal life and everything. And I'm sure data is something, it's gold. Data is gold right now. The CRM, where we can connect with all our fans, where we know where they are from, what they like, if they like one player more than other, what are their habits in the football, what they want to buy or not want to buy. So right now I think data and CRM, it's really important for us to focus and approach from our fans.
Pedro, Cristiano mentioned something very interesting there. It's about this, uniqueness of football, that it has basically customers, fans that are in love with the brand, right? And over the past decade or so, even though consumer behavior and media consumptions have shifted towards digital-first reality, almost counterintuitively, it hasn't yet really happened in the sponsorships space, which is where you specialize in. Why do you think that is, and is it finally changing?
Well, first, thanks for us for being here. Hi everyone. Hi Esteban, Cristiano, and Andrew. Well, that's a good question. We believe on that the 80% of the revenue of a property, let's say football in this case, is coming directly from broadcasting TV. The other part from merchandising or licensing or whatever is coming the other side. The digital side a few years ago became just a way of, how can I say, boost the fan engagement. No? So once you create the audience, in the last probably 1 or 2 years, what's happening is that properties already seen the opportunity, as you probably following the track now, what Cristiano was saying, that once you have the audiences, you are able to track them see what they are doing with you. You're able to track the performance, and able to monetize it, in a way of really generate a new revenue stream on that. So what's happening in the last 2 years, not because of COVID situation, that some properties already saw this opportunity of, I have this base of audience, brands in the other side are evolving as well and want something else. Brands are looking for a tracking way of each dollar they are investing in you as a property. So we're able to track it from the beginning to the end. They are used to do this outside of sports with other platforms they're investing, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. Why not doing this on a sponsorship? So COVID, what did now in the last 2 or 3 months, I would say, is accelerated, this process of digitalizing the sponsorship, something that is already happening. It's not from 0 to 1. We are in the process of doing this. So that's why for Horizm, I'd say, as a company, provides an even bigger opportunity, to address this problem in industry, which is how can I monetize basically my digital inventory? But not only make a pack and sell, but how can I track the performance of this sponsor, particularly sponsor doing? How can I boost the performance of this? And then, of course, with artificial intelligence, be able to predict if I have 100 value on this post, how can I make this worth 110? So this is more, in our case, focus on business, I would say, performance, but definitely is the, following the trend that Cristiano said here. Now you have the fun on board. Now we're going to be able, many companies will be driving this engagement somehow. The second step of any business in the way is how to monetize this, because in the end, properties now have a shortage of revenue because of broadcasting. There's no matches, there's no ticketing, there's nothing happening around. Digital is the only, I would say, semi-virgin channel to be exploited in a good way, properly. And that's what we are seeing now in the last definitely 3 months. We're already working with this for a year, but definitely now we're like booming completely, the new scenario.
Okay. Andy, you're obviously a gamer and you work in the esports industry, but you're also a football fan and you used to work in the football industry. From what you've managed to observe over these past couple of months, how similar or different has the esports industry fared during this lockdown, during this pandemic, as compared to the football industry?
Well, again, hello everybody, and thanks very much for having me. I feel like I'm kind of interloping, so I should establish my football credentials first, and then we'll still talk about esports. So yes, I worked for the Middle East's largest event promoter in my last role. So I delivered the FIFA Club World Cup twice, the AFC Asian Cup UAE 2019, and various other football, tennis, MMA, and so on events. So my background is in sport. I think it's worth just unpacking the revenue line. So Pedro talked about it just there, but like football clubs, esports teams gather revenues from winning matches. They have some match day revenues as well, which I'll come back to in a minute. We sell lifestyle and pro kit, and we have partnerships. What we don't have, of course, is a stadium in most instances, and our matchday revenues aren't as regular as yours. The matchday revenues are ancillary to major events that we attend and play at. So where football clubs suffered, which is matchday revenues, broadcast income, those kind of things, esports doesn't really have those in a meaningful way. So in that sense, we were kind of, the dip for us was lower. It came from impacting on ancillary revenues. So apparel revenues worldwide are down. On the plus side, we had, sorry, that's a very broad statement. Visitation, average order value, conversion of, let's say, fashion visits to websites and those kind of things are down across the board, regardless of which geography you are in. And that happened the moment that countries started to go into lockdown. People transferred from discretionary purchases to essentials. And only now those things really starting to climb back out. But our dip was lower because, number one, we didn't have the revenues to lose in the first place from those kind of really key things. And again, as Pedro said, if 80% of your revenue is coming from broadcast and match day, then that swing is major. We didn't have that swing. The second point, of course, is that we are natively digital as a product. So if I think about the timing of lockdown for esports, there's an event called the IAM Katowice Masters, which is the end of February. And that event was delivered to a fan-free stadium. a week or so later, the Liverpool Atletico Madrid game in the UEFA Champions League was completed in front of 52,000 fans in Anfield. So we started to kind of lock down pretty quick and start to generate digital products. So straight away, you've got the games being played online to a digital audience anyway, and the fans are there ready for that. The broadcast experience is there ready to be delivered online and also monetized online. And the question then became, okay, how can we ensure that our partnerships revenue stay robust by switching out the few physical activation pieces that we still had remaining into digital product? And that became a rights holder negotiation. So basically saying to the rights holders, look, guys, if there were any restrictions previously, you're going to have to open those up a little bit now. And they were willing to do that, because don't forget, in eSports, the rights holders, and this is obviously one of the key differences between eSports and sports, nobody owns football per se. There might be some people who claim to own football, but fundamentally it is you can go and have a kickabout without paying anybody to do it. In eSports, the developers own the game. Okay, so they're also the rights holders for present purposes. And so you need them to approve whatever it is you're going to do from a commercial standpoint. But they understood intrinsically, inherently, there's a clear link between what it is that we do as the pro end of gaming and their sales of their product. So they were open to those discussions, and very quickly the ecosystem started to shift. I mean, what I see as somebody who's outside of football now is a lot of the blockages in the chain are around the barriers that people have built around their business models, that they are concerned about being affected by decisions they make now. So if you start to release, that firm grip that you have on some of those revenue streams, where does that leave you as a business? And this is something we can come and discuss and develop as we start to talk about digital inventory. But fundamentally, I think the place that esports found itself in, which was a willingness for the ecosystem to shift very quickly, to take advantage of this gap between the massive demand that came about through the lack of content and the lack of supply from traditional sports, that opportunity had to be taken, and so the ecosystem could shift.
Thanks, Andy. Esteban, back to you. Your platform also focuses on scouting, and with scouts unable to travel and with budget squeeze, it seems almost that all solutions point towards technology, right? Because in order to identify suitable players, clubs either have to put more resources at video scouting, or they have to get smarter with data, right? So is this, according to you, the definitive turning point in which even the biggest technology skeptics and football romantics starts realizing that data-driven decision-making is here to stay?
Well, I think video analysis and data tools are complementary, and we recommend to use all together in order to analyze players in scouting. But if I have to start talking about football romantics, I have to say I'm the first one in the line, because I know how football is as a player, and also now as a CEO of my data company. So I have to say I'm a romantic too, but I think artificial intelligence is one tool that will help the clubs to take better decisions, and this is something that is not fighting with being romantic or with football expertise of the scouters, but it's only trying to help. The same way you take your calculator to the math exam, so you can use tools in order to have more information or better information in order to make better decisions. And this is, as I said before, the most important thing is people in clubs can understand the difference about visualization of past data and using this data, treat this data with models or algorithms in order to make predictions. First of all, generate knowledge about everything, make predictions, and take decisions with less uncertainty. In scouting, we always say that they only respond to the club question is to give information about the future, because the club is not asking themselves about what has been the performance of players they want to sign, but they want to know how the player will behave in a new context. So past data is discontextualized, and predictive data have this contextualization that is key into the information we can provide to the clubs. So in this way, in this way, we think this kind of analysis from artificial intelligence is totally important. The ability of artificial intelligence to generate knowledge about everything is huge. And I had the sentence of Cristiano before that was wondering about how the players will behave with the empty stadiums. Now we have the opportunity to understand this from science, because I don't think players will be desmotivated or motivated or extra motivated in the whole way, but some players will behave in a way and another players will behave in another way. This way will be different if they play at home and away. And with information collecting and the games is going to be played now, of course you can understand and introduce this variable and understand how the players has been affected with the empty stadiums. And this is some information will help you to make predictions about his behavior, for example, in the next year of a player if you want to sign, and in a new context that can be in an empty stadium or maybe in a full stadium. So everything we are wondering about how something will affect, and now we are in a situation where many things will be affecting in the near future because we have a new situation. Everything we are wondering about how or which way it's going to be affected can be discovered by science, and in this case by artificial intelligence. That we need to think artificial intelligence is a machine to generate knowledge. This new knowledge will help you to make predictions, science predictions, and with these predictions, decision making will be much easier.
Fascinating. Cristiano, when we do get back to allowing fans in the stadium, do you anticipate any necessary innovations with regards to the fan experience? So talking about stadium access, talking about catering, talking about hospitality, talking about fan zones. Do you think that the experience will be similar as before, or will you need to redesign it completely?
Yeah, I think we will need to touch in all areas. All areas need to be redesigned, not completely, but a little, because they need to survive that pandemic. And we must be able to reinvent all the process and habits that could exist. But important thing that anything that has to be done has to help us and the clubs to win inside the field and also financially. So everything need to focus on two things: win inside the field and help us in terms on finance. I think this will redesign all areas because of COVID-19. Many millions of jobs are therefore at risk globally. Stadium tours are closed, shops are closed, museum, ticketing, catering, everything. So we need to focus in each area and see what we need to reinvite to come again as before and starting making money and helping the team to win the games. But this is something that is not only for the clubs, because when you have a game has thousands of people involved. You have in our case, Benfica Stadium, we have a lot of people in the game organization, but you have also economic around the stadium. So Lisbon, on a game day, you have transportation, you have hotels, you have restaurants, you have retail, sporting services, industries that are connected with that event. A lot of people live and work for the events that happen once a week in our stadium. So this affects also the tourism, the infrastructure, transportation, catering, media broadcasting. So if we look at that, we are looking for thousands of jobs, not only in Benfica, but this involves much more than Benfica and other clubs, because a club involves a big ecosystem around that. And that business right now, they are suffering a lot, and I think we need to follow the restrictions that are imposed due to COVID, and I'm sure we will find a way to change some of that areas and work again as before. But the essence of football will continue for sure. The connection with the fans will remain, but we will have to adapt to the new reality. We have to adapt all areas to the new reality and thinking about what new we can do to involve everyone, every fans. The security access to the stadiums will change for sure. The position of the e-commerce will change and gain a greater relevance because the e-commerce right now will be really important in this situation. The hospitalities areas, we will have to adapt to meet all the OMS requirements, and we have to see how people will react to all of this transformation because it's a new situation for all of us. So we don't know how they will react at the beginning. We will learn from that. I'm sure that we will learn from that, and we will take our notes and start doing the things better. Because no football club had a plan for this, because nobody expects something in this dimension. Football is what it is today because have more than 100 years of history, experience, and transformation. And this will be another transformation, and I'm sure we will learn a lot from that transformation, and we will create new habits and new ways to connect with the fans. But I'm sure that the things will not change completely because the football have a long history and people have many habits. But I'm sure all the areas, if we look at that and 360 point of view, everything will change a little.
Andy, you mentioned before that the esports community or industry, whatever you prefer to call it, is digitally native, right? And I guess arguably that's why the younger generations and a lot of the brands have been getting into that space more than traditional sports. Can you enlighten us a little bit with some of the ways fan engagement and digital activations work in your environment?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's probably two things to talk about there. The first one is the broadcast experience. So when I was born in the UK, which was some time ago, we had 3 channels, and that was a supply environment, right? So effectively you watch whatever was on, and if you didn't want to watch what was on, you turn off the TV and you did something else. Obviously, in recent years, we've moved to a demand environment. Netflix and these other kind of streaming platforms have introduced a sense of you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want to watch it. And that's also true in football, of course. So the transition there was from the big match on a, maybe on a Sunday afternoon where everyone would turn in and watch it, and it would commonly be to the sort of more popular teams, to an omni-channel experience where you watch whatever your red button allows you to watch and so on. Now, if you were born with the first of those things, the second of those things seems extremely dynamic. To our community, it seems extremely limited because their experience, they grew up with YouTube. And YouTube is the ultimate omni-channel environment. If I want to watch somebody cooking, if I want to watch somebody playing a game or whatever, fundamentally, I can watch absolutely whatever I want in almost any language in which it happens. And if I don't like it, I click and I watch something else. So I think that it's really important to understand that as the initial platform. What we consider to be an extremely sort of varied and interesting broadcast product seems limiting to the people who are kind of coming up through our community. And that informs our digital activations in a big way, and I'll come on to that in a sec. The second thing, it's important to really understand what games are. So obviously for present purposes, the main game, if you like, is FIFA, but FIFA is, it sort of chips away at this to an extent. Games now are social media platforms, right? They are places where people come together and they engage. And then, the experience, most games now, are built so that it pushes you into that system where you're playing either strangers or you're playing friends. You get points and in-game items for connecting up with people who you know in your network and so on. So everything is very social and engaged from the start, from the get-go. the ultimate expression of that is platforms like Roblox. 2 billion hours of Roblox played in April. Fortnite, 3 billion hours of Fortnite played. So you got 3 billion hours of Twitch, which is the sort of mainstreaming platform, in Q1, and 3 billion hours of Fortnite played in April alone. So why are people playing those games? They're not just sitting there and sort of unilaterally engaging with it, which is the phrase I used earlier on. This is not a pure viewership thing. This is not I switch it on and I sit back and I play. This is extremely engaging, 24 hours a day of multifaceted content. So you don't just watch, you don't just click and like, you interact with people who are on the screen, you're asking them questions, they're picking you out of the chat. So if we're watching this on Twitch, for example, we would have a Twitch stream coming down here with commentary, right? We'd have people watching, broadcasting through the Twitch platform, they're picking things out of the stream, they're talking about them online. It's extremely dynamic. That's a very long way around of saying that if your digital content is not extremely and immediately engaging, right? So not just something which is different, but something which allows the community to interact with it, then you're looking at digital content in completely the wrong way. So we did an activation for our friends at UNICEF. Marcus Rashford, playing the best FIFA player in the world who plays for Fnatic, his name is Tex. And that became interesting because the community gets in and they're asking Marcus questions about his injury and how he's recovering, and he's there with his brothers and that kind of thing. It's an insight into Marcus Rashford's life. People are not watching that stream to watch Marcus Rashford be brilliant at FIFA, because bless him, he's wonderful at very many things, but FIFA is not one of them. They're watching there because they get a behind the scenes piece, and that wasn't facilitated by the club necessarily, although Manchester United obviously has a relationship with UNICEF. That's Marcus Rashford trying to understand his experience as his interaction with fans and how he can use that for good. He's a person who's had some challenges with social media and fans, so he's trying to refashion that. So again, live, engaging on a completely different level. So not just a bit of peek behind the scenes, but a real way of walking the fans into that space. So again, if I then track that into what we're doing with big brands, BMW is a partner of Fnatic, proud to have BMW on board. Taking a brand like that, which is very understanding of sports sponsorship in the traditional sense, right? Like, okay, so we have the BMW roundel here, which is one of the most valuable trademarks in the whole world, well known worldwide. Putting something on a shirt or putting something on a building is 20 years ago, so far as sports sponsorship is concerned. I mean, that's true across the board anyway. BMW wants to talk to our demographic of, generally speaking, very young fans, 16 to 25-year-olds, massive, like predominate in Twitch viewership and so on. What can we do to speak to those fans? Well, we talk to them authentically. We talk to them on their terms and on their turf. We don't require them to cross bridges to meet the content. We provide the content in the places where they want to watch it. And we activate in a way which is authentic to our brand. So we eSports, so Fnatic, for example, is one of the longest standing eSports teams. We've been doing this for 15 years. So our ability to digitally activate is honed in a way that we had to do it that way, whereas football came to it from the physical activation. So they're working back, we're working forward to it. And as Pedro said earlier on, again, I think football has done some wonderful things, but if you look at where the wonderful things have happened in COVID from a digital activation standpoint, it's been the community-driven stuff, it's been the authentic stuff, it's been fans playing other fans under the banners of the teams, generally speaking, and it's been the smaller teams, certainly in the UK, that have been the best at doing that. Why? Because they have the links to the community, right? They have that ability to activate the fans in a way that I would say the bigger teams really struggle to do, because it's become more of a control issue for them, and a kind of like it's every fan engagement is relating to the funnel rather than necessarily just the act of expressing your fandom. So authenticity and understanding that degree of engagement that's required, that's the key to successful digital activation.
Pedro, for this to happen in the football industry, we're gonna need to see a big paradigm shift, right? Because I guess, I mean, you and I know a lot of people in this football industry, they tend to be quite, let's say, prudent, cautious, protective of their brand, of what they've built up so far. And of course, I mean, as human beings, I guess they're afraid of losing that, right? So this paradigm shift will require a different mindset, right? If they want to benefit from the opportunities that digital offers, then they're gonna have to change the mindset. But they'll also need to rebalance the way the different assets are valued, right? How will things, in your opinion, change in the future in terms of packaging, selling, tracking, from a commercial point of view?
Well, I think following what Andrew was saying, which I think is extremely relevant, the way sponsorship was sold 20 years, 25 years ago, back when I was an athlete, not even say like Esteban, the way was, you have the t-shirt, the picture here on the top of a mountain. How you measure this? Well, you measure by centimeter, then you put in the, traditional thing, you see, okay, they give me 100, this was exposed in the media by 200, awesome, that's awesome. So it means that a double or triple or whatever the investment was. Today on the digital side, and then following what Andrew was saying, the digital content, you are able to pack this in a different way that generate much more relation to your fan, I would say, in a live way. You're able to track this on digital. It's very difficult to track when you have exposure. Mid exposure is one thing. When you have digital content, you need to be able to track this. So without a traceability of this dollar invested, that brands are using, BMW in the traditional sponsorship with the logo, without this in the digital, brands are not be able to invest, I would say, as a sponsorship on the digital. So the way of you pack this content through branded content, I would say, or as our team is saying, fan stories now, is the way to approach the brands now, because it's the way to create value to this content. Put advertising, this is over. Basically, it's old school. Now, in the example with the eSports, definitely, and football is learning on this, and say we need to create a story on this. It doesn't matter if I'm saying every time there's a birthday player, or the mother of a player, or the dog of a player is doing the birthday. Let's pack this and put, okay, this can be by a brand, this is fine, but this is generating some value to your fan. So the way of doing this without a tool to evaluate, to track this performance, to monetize it, commercialize this, and then enhance, and probably using, as Esteban was saying, using predictive AI, what's the point of sponsorship? Become a traditional 20 years ago model. Traditional IP is being replaced. Not everything, of course, and that's Cristiano was saying this is still the romantic side of the football, and Esteban as well. The digital is able to basically, I would say, transform the way we are selling sponsorship. Traditional business of, okay, I give you a big check and this is the brand and I put you everywhere. It's being separated. It's happening now because on the other side, the brands, new ones, traditional ones are pushing into this direction. Is I'll put you $1, I wouldn't know where this dollar is going because they are getting used to this now. Without this traceability, it would be very difficult. Either you're a top 1 tier property in football, either you're a smaller team. You need the content, you have the digital content being packaged, but you need to track this. And that's probably following, my colleagues were saying, in the way that the transformation now with the COVID, because of the digital and the exposure of this has been, let's say, accelerating this process. This was already happening a year or 2 years ago, slowly, like a nice to have thing. Now is becoming for football probably a must have thing to have, because otherwise you cannot, I would say, put again back some revenue that is falling down because of, no physical events, at least in the 12, 24 month scenario that we don't know what's going to be the output of all this situation, but at least in a year or two. So that's a great opportunity for properties to really do this. Yeah, it's nice to have now. It's, let's do this. We have the time to do this. We can learn with other eSports, for example, what they're doing. So let's do this transformation at this station.
Thanks, Pedro. Esteban, I guess as a player, you're quite used to reading a lot about transfer markets, right? And people, fans, they always have their opinion on it. They always say, this player is not worth that much money, or the salaries is not, what they're worth. But now it seems that clubs will need to get smarter and more careful when choosing who to sign and how much to pay for him. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, of course, transfer market is, as any in football, as any market is hard to understand in the whole concept. We always say that we need to understand the difference between the price of the player that is affected by, of course, the market, the economic behavior, the offer and demand, the media influence. Everything is affecting to the price one player must have in the market. But we need to use technology to have a reference. And what we think is the reference is the real value of the player in terms of his performance. This is something that is hard to find into clubs. And when you don't have this reference, of course, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand if the price they are offering is fair, unfair, is cheap or expensive. So what we offer to clubs is try to understand what is the real value of the player in terms of performance. First of all, we need to understand and estimate the current value of the player in terms of the performance he's having, and then transport this value into the future to make predictions about how this value will be in the next years. So with this information, we have the reference in order to compare with the price of the player, and this is, I think, the key point in order to find these underrated players. That is, of course, what we are trying to find in the market as a club. So transfer market, of course, always affected by lots of things, but always have your scientific reference driven by artificial intelligence in order to understand the real value of the players.
Cristiano, from your perspective, obviously Benfica, their business model pretty much is one where you develop great players in your academy, and then you sell them on to bigger clubs for very decent transfer fees, right? So from a business model perspective, if it's fair to assume that the transfer market will have a correction in the next few months and year maybe, what can a club like Benfica do to adapt to this reality and ensure that it doesn't widen the gap with the other bigger European clubs, basically?
Well, this is not in contract my area, but I think we need to see how the market will react. But football will not stop, and Benfica will keep doing what we do really well, that is forming new talents. We are good forming new talents, and we need to focus on that and keep going what we are doing. Unfortunately, the television rights in Portugal are much lower than in another leagues, such as the English Premier League. So we have to have another ways to generate revenue while maintaining a competitive team to stay ahead in all competitions. And of course, selling our youth talents has been an important factor in Benfica financial health. And Benfica had an excellent management regarding our football campus. And that is what we will continue to do for sure, to remain one of the most competitive teams in Europe, regardless of the financial changes that can happen, because it's something new and we don't know how the market will react. But our job, as I said before, it's continue to do what we do well, that is forming really good players. And I'm sure if we keep our work, this will be reflected in the field and also financially. Because independent of the market, our job is to keep forming good players. And as I said before, everything that we do, we need to focus in the future and how to win inside the field and how to win also in terms of financial.
Pedro, Cristiano mentioned something interesting there about Portugal as a market being a lot more limited, let's say, compared to UK, Spain, France, Italy, Germany. From your perspective, is there anything that the smaller clubs and leagues can do to continue, staying in the game and playing this catch-up game and making sure that the gap between the different leagues and the different clubs doesn't widen? Or do you think that the parallels between the analog and digital spaces are pretty much the same, and therefore essentially dictated by the limited reach they have?
Well, as you mentioned, it's a different approach from tier one property, I would say, that is global and is able to reach 300, 250 million fans around the globe, rather than a local team which 2 million, 3 million fans on, let's say, following the social media, I would say, But we have examples, and with Horizm, that from both ends, so big property with a smaller property, I would say, or mid-sized property, that the way they are approaching the monetization, I think following what Andrew said before, they are reaching their community. So the engagement, I would say, south of Spain with a smaller club, like Betis, which is a great one example. It's extremely high engagement in the community. They're not probably a global football club, but the way they're being able to monetize, and they have the opportunity to monetize this. Is even comparing to the big one is even better if they're able to provide for these brands. They are looking for this. Now, some brands are looking for the exposure global because that's their strategy. Some brands are looking for achieving specific communities. That's the opportunity within the digital. And regardless the size of the property, you are able to monetize it when you have the data, when you have the technology supporting this commercialization of these assets. It doesn't matter if you are a super global property or if you are, I would say, a mid-sized local team. In the end, now with this, it comes the opportunity again for not only for the big ones, but for the mid-sized properties to monetize and especially on the digital assets.
Thanks. Andy, for football clubs and football leagues alike, getting into eSports, is their way of innovating, right? For some reason, it seems that a lot of them still haven't managed to get it right. Why do you think is that?
It's an interesting question. What do you mean by right? I suppose this is the lawyer in me speaking. I'm passing your language, but I think the kind of why do you want to be in esports, and how do you conceive of esports as a kind of a subject matter? Because esports is an umbrella term. I suppose in the same way that football covers, futsal and five-a-side, and there's a women's game, there's a men's game, and there's the academies and all this kind of thing. It's a multifaceted piece, and what's right for futsal may not be right for the professional 11-a-side men's game, and so on. It's similarly true in esports. I think teams whenever I speak in, let's say, sports and esports environments, very commonly, I think there is a sense that esports is a bolt-on to sport, and most of the learning should be going in one direction. And that's true in relation to things, I would say, like player development, safeguarding, management of integrity issues. I think that's true. But here, I think this is an area where there could be a little bit more humbleness in terms of how teams approach esport, because fundamentally, why are people watching two people play FIFA? Unless one of those two people is famous, they're basically watching it to learn how to be better at FIFA in the main, right? I couldn't tell you what the most watched FIFA stream is of all time, but if I took two of the best players in the world, so again, Tex I mentioned earlier on, or someone like #Tom or Mohamed Al-Dasari, people who are winning tournaments and who have a healthy income, let's say, from playing FIFA. If I put those two players together and we were to watch them play, people would still rather watch. If we could get Messi and Ronaldo to come together on a stream, that would be the most watched FIFA stream of all time, right? So there's still that kind of stunt element to it. Well, the games in which we're most successful and we monetize best as an esports team are the teams where the team is fundamental to the game. In FIFA, your teams are already there. I mean, every single team in the world, pretty much, at least at the professional level, is already represented in the game. That's one of the reasons why people love it, is that authenticity and that sense of this is always one of the things with Pro Evolution Soccer and FIFA. Certainly when those titles were early, Pro Evolution Soccer didn't have the license, so people didn't enjoy it playing it as much. So the team's already there. Your participation in the game is not a gateway to people enjoying that game, because they're probably already watching it anyway. FIFA in the UK anyway was the most bought game of 2019 by a mile. Sold more than 500,000 copies more than the next game. So you're not facilitating them buying the game, So that doesn't do anything for you in terms of your revenues. They're already playing the game anyway. They're already playing it using your players anyway. So what advantage does you having this this sort of team have, particularly when you look at it as a bolt-on? Now, if you look at it as a new platform for your talent to activate digitally, right? So those players of your esports team who will be very familiar with digital activation, will be very familiar with what it takes to successfully stream. And they can bring those players into the environment and start to build their digital brands to get them comfortable with activating a digital space. And you can bring your sponsors with you, right? So you can say to your sponsors, we'll bring you into this digital environment through these players who inherently understand how to activate those things, how to run a Twitch stream, how to talk about a game around it. Broadcast is coming towards you. You know, platforms like Twitch, which again is owned by Amazon, as I'm sure you know, are a route to monetization that current broadcast platforms don't offer. So for example, right now, if a Premier League game was being broadcast on Twitch, and Amazon is already obviously in the business of buying Premier League football, there could be an offer, right? Okay, it pops up now. Okay, if you would like to buy a Harry Kane jersey, we can have it at your door in an hour if you live in a major city. And you can see how that monetization capability, those kind of platforms, immediately tracks into the football broadcast product very heavily. So that broadcast trend is already happening. Allow those esports teams to bring you into that space. If they're just there as an activation for your team, like, oh, we feel like we should do this, then again, we've talked already about how social engagement, unilateral social engagement, does nothing really for engagement in your piece. So that will be my main question to any team that wants to have an esports team. Why are you doing it? What are you hoping to achieve? What's the goal here? And how can you use it to more effectively reach your commercial goals? And that's going to take a bit of lateral thinking and sometimes also a bit of humbleness in terms of how you're approaching that product.
Thanks. Esteban, we've been seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning being applied already, as you mentioned in the previous questions, to things like performance, scouting, transfers, sponsorship as well, in the case of Pedro's tool, also business management, of course. Is there any other part of the football ecosystem which you see it having a potential application for in the future?
Yes, well, I have to say that we know exactly what we are best. I think our expertise relies on performance and also in AI system developing. The reason we are offering products on sponsorship is because we are happy to offer Pedro's Horizm platform. Because we have checked in the market and we have identified this platform as the best in market, offering something very specific and very important for the clubs. So we are happy to work together with them into this AI boost developing if we can do something for them. But we have identified that they are the best offering this kind of technology. So after we are providing AI tools into the performance area and also in business, whatever, we have identified that working together with this platform Horizm is best we can offer to the clubs. And the way I think there are two races into the data world in football. One is for collecting data, and the other one is for analyzing data. And in both races, artificial intelligence is pushing very, very hard because they are artificial intelligence is key into both areas, and we are trying to work in both areas. In collecting, we have been working not in football but in other sports as tennis with computer vision systems. And also in football by not creating the data, but cleaning the data and getting the data ready to be analyzed. And in analysis, what we are doing is the thing I have been talking before about analyzing the data into a prescriptive and predictive way, because we think this is the future of clubs. So what I think is next things we will be able to analyze depends on this collecting race and how the thing is going in this way. For example, if clubs or leagues start collecting data about the heart rate of the players with computer vision technology, or also with stickers, sensors, or whatever. With this data, of course, we will be able to analyze and give different solutions about risk of heart problems and whatever. So at some point, we're working with the data we have. We are trying to get better data, and we are waiting for others to collect different data in order to analyze this data in the best way with artificial intelligence.
Great. Cristiano, when we talk about innovation, people also think about things like augmented reality or virtual reality. And I remember already 2 years ago when I visited the Benfica stadium, you already implemented it in the stadium tour and everything like that. Are these things, are we going to see more of these things in the future? Are they here to stay? Because I haven't quite seen that boom yet. But do you think because of the COVID consequences or because of the technology, it will have a more let's say, presence in the fan experience of the football?
Yeah, I think this is something to stay. We have already some innovation projects in our stadium tour in the stadium with augmented reality. And as Pedro said before, this is a thing that this is a must thing to have. And I'm sure these more and more clubs will follow that innovation projects. And it's really nice to have here Andre with us, because I think we have a lot to learn with eSports. eSports are doing really great work in terms of digital. In many events, they are doing really good events with augmented reality, streamings and everything. So I think football right now have a lot to learn with eSports, because they are used to work in that way. And for me, I think the world is increasingly connected, and nowadays it's very easy to connect any part of the world in seconds. So I think Benfica needs to develop much more than we have in terms of this digital strategy, and much more clubs will follow us, and we will follow some other clubs, because I think the virtual reality and augmented reality are things that are here to stay. Having the visitors in the stadium, and you can stay in USA or you can stay in Brazil, and you have opportunity in seconds to connect and see each space in Benfica Stadium, each space of our campus. So I think this is something that will change the way that we look at the business, and trying to connect with the fans all around the world, having visits, virtual visits, tours in the stadium from people that can't have the chance to come to Portugal and make a tour in our stadium. Every experience from our stadium, feel our values, feel the atmosphere that we have in the stadium on the game day. So I think this is a sector that have a lot to increase, and I'm sure this is something to stay. And I think in a couple of years or in a couple of months, most part of the clubs will have a strategy based on that augmented reality, virtual reality, where everyone can feel more the club and can feel some aspects that before they don't have the chance to explore. So I think this is something to stay, and we will see this in much more clubs. Yeah.
Okay. Pedro, another shift that has been happening over the past few years already, again, like in the commercial space, is this dynamic between, let's say, clubs or rights holders, brands, and athletes, right? And the shift that's been taking place is, brands going more towards the players because they have more social media followers, right? And therefore they have sometimes also more leverage, right, in negotiating some of those deals. Do you think that there's a certain friction between clubs and athletes, or do you think there's plenty to go around for everyone?
No, that's a very good question, I think, and considering now we've seen the recently hot topic, on Last Dance, everybody's watching, talking about in sports, and one of the main hot topic was about organization or team. This kind of was read back in the 90s. This not problem, but this situation. Today with the digital, well, the situation is more data oriented, I would say, and as you said, we have athletes, and I think we are working with athletes that the valuation of the athlete on the digital ecosystem is bigger than many properties we are working with as football clubs. Well, as you said, I don't see as a friction. I see the opportunity for both sides to capitalize this and literally monetize it. It's true that, and I can go back, shift this back to Esteban on this side, the performance of the player plus the valuation as an asset. This combination, looking in the future, and probably say as one Andre was saying, about the e-players, I would say, that's the thing that the football can use this situation as well, to capitalize this. In the essence, you have this player with millions of followers. You have a property that is still smaller than the player, but the way you combine this association can bring benefits for both of this. So that's what we think it's happening now. Of course, not as a friction, but as opportunity for both sides. In the way it's happening, some case we see some friction. It's true, but the way you are evolving, you always have this, some rocks on the way. Definitely.
Okay. Andy, if you were to join the management of a football club this summer, knowing what you know, all your experience, both in esports and in traditional sports, if you want to call it, what would be the first two things you try to convince your CEO of doing, and how would you do it?
Wow. Well, first of all, I'd be delighted to be working in football, because for all the things we kind of talked about, football is still an incredible product, and it has the ability to create emotions and generate passion and move people commercially above any other sporting product that we have available. So football is still wonderful, and to have access to that content is an incredible thing. I think that if you're talking to a CEO in that environment, I would say, what is your commercial team doing to capture the fans of the future? I mean, Esteban talked about the future, and he talked about data, and Pedro's talked about how we monetize those data insights and how we pull that together. Your personnel that you have in your commercial team may very well be people who have coasted on the windfall amounts of money that have come from broadcast revenues and people throwing themselves in the way of football, but sponsors are being a lot more savvy, and they're going to be a lot more even savvier post-COVID when they're looking at whether or not that spend is actually returned. The days in which you could say, well, look, I'm just going to put you in front of this wonderful football product, and by having your brand associated with something like the Champions League, then automatically that will increase your brand value and therefore monetize. Those days are over. So to what extent does your commercial team really understand that world? So me and the CEO, we're going to be looking at that question first of all. So how does the commercial team respond to this, and how do they tell you how to convert that social engagement into monetization? So tell me how we're going to gather those fans of the future, and how we're going to adhere them to the brand, and then how we're going to monetize them. That's going to involve, I would suggest, in the future, a lot more community activation. So to what extent are those people talking with your community and activating it and generating those conversations around your brand? So that's the second one. I'm going to have a wander down the corridor in HQ, and I'm going to speak to the legal team. And the reason I want to speak to the legal team is because I understand how they perceive their role in relation to the brand and the assets that are associated with your football brand. So, for example, one of the things that we see in digital activation is that the fans like to take sponsor branding and they do things with it, right? So they will, for example, create digital content around one of our sponsors, OnePlus, which is a mobile brand. They create content using the OnePlus logo, they attach it to players, and they put it on the internet, right? So they put it on Insta and Twitter particularly. How you deal with that as a brand, and how grown up you are in terms of allowing people to do that kind of thing with your brand, when all the previous advice has been, control it, right? You cannot allow people to use your brand without your approval. That is directly detrimental to your revenue streams. You in a digital world, you can't take that controlling approach. You can't be constantly shutting down. I can remember being at an event in Spain earlier on this year with a representative from a very substantial Premier League club, and her piece there was basically talking about how they control, right? How they shut down counterfeiting, how they shut down digital activations from people writing blogs that are associated with their club that they don't support, and so on. It's time to spin that thinking around, and that's because ultimately people will write about your brand in a positive way if you give them a framework within which to do it. And that framework is not a controlling framework, it's a facilitative framework. In order to make these pieces happen and to allow people to grow this in an organic, community-driven, positive way, some of those controls that you might have applied in the past are probably going to have to change. So number one, how's your commercial team looking at this from a digital standpoint? Do they speak the language of digital? Do they come from that environment? Do they understand it? And if they're not, again, are they humble enough to be able to, say, okay, maybe there's some things that I don't know, maybe some things that I should learn. How am I going to get those learnings in, and so on. Second one, again, that legal team, is it all about the control? How flexible are we going to be with the brand? What are we going to give away? And how is that going to allow us also to activate those player assets? Because again, what we haven't seen yet is a breakout player from COVID streaming online. And that's one thing I've been very surprised by. And I think in part, that's probably because clubs are used to controlling player assets very tightly, right? So how you interact with the media is a broadcast piece with a stand-up board behind you, or it's a press release which is very heavily controlled. Again, that verb control there is going to be a problem because your fans are starting to engage with other entertainment celebrities in a completely different way to how they engage with your brand talent. And again, either you can worry about that and go, oh, what if a player says something on a stream we don't like, or he's put in a scenario where someone asks him a question where there's not a media officer there sitting next to him to say, I'm sorry, he's not going to answer that. The trends are moving away from that level of control. They're moving to a much more authentic, engaging space. So for player assets in particular, they can be wonderful ambassadors for your brand, and it's scalable, right? So it's not just limited to the licensee ecosystem that you have within broadcast now, where, for example, that person is speaking to the rights holder for that event, and only people who are able to pay their $100 a month, whatever it is, to access that content are able to see that content. That's very limiting for your brand. And that's great whilst the broadcasters are still paying a lot of money to you, or assuming that they are doing that. But if they're not doing that, then what they're actually doing is really hindering your ability to scale your brand, because your future consumers may not be in your home country. The only way to engage with them at scale, and particularly as we see more and more mobile engagement in sports, right? So people consuming content either by second screening or just by simply engaging with your content solely through mobile, which is the great democratizer of this kind of content. You don't have to have a TV or even a laptop anymore. Everything comes through your phone. Those kind of scalable products are only really available to you if you're prepared to use those player assets in a way that facilitates scale. And that is going to include less control. So again, that's where your legal team, now with their new let's not control, let's scale mindset, and your commercial team with their new, okay, actually, digital first, always, data-driven activations always are going to come together and allow you to scale your brand more effectively. So hopefully that'll be my day done, and I'll be able to have a lovely dinner with the CEO and crack on.
Great, yeah, lots of food for thought there, and I think definitely a great opportunity for some of those club CEOs to do a bit of introspection, right? So great, thanks so far. At this point, I did want to ask you guys a few questions from the audience, because it is our last episode, and I definitely wanted to give them the opportunity to pick your brains as well a little bit. Esteban, we have Ayush from India asking how artificial intelligence and predictive modeling are impacting the betting market. Do you have any perspectives on that?
Yeah, this is the the first question we always get from the audience on every meeting. Of course, you can be betting companies running sports, mainly football. Is I think betting companies are first or second sponsorship of every club in Spain in first division, except in Real Sociedad, my former club, that hasn't any betting company as a sponsorship. But they are moving lots of money, and of course predictive information about performance and also about what's happening during the game. That is something we can provide to clubs. Must be interesting for them in order to not only establish their prices in order of with the betting of people in their platform, but also with what's happening on the pitch, collected by professionals in data and analyzed by artificial intelligence. Of course, this can be interesting. We haven't go this way yet because I'm a professional football player, and we have received some calls in this direction, but I'm still a professional football player. I'm trying to focus on my career and giving this kind of services to the clubs. That is why I started this company. We don't know what will happen in the future, but at the point, of course, we have received lots of interest in this direction, but we haven't made any step in this direction yet.
Great. And then Cristiano, we have a question for you from Sofia Rango. When the matches return, there won't be the same opportunity to get the same revenues from hospitality, fan events, etc. What can football clubs do to make up for those incomes?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, so she's saying that when the football games return, there are certain revenue streams that you won't be able to tap into, right?
Yes.
So she's asking, what can you do to make up for those lost revenues?
Yeah, I think some revenues will not come again in the next couple months. I think for the next month, for the end of this season and the beginning of the next season, we will not have the games with the fans. So I'm sure we will lose a lot of money in terms of ticketing, hospitality, and that kind of things. And this is the opportunity for us to find the new ways to generate money in terms of digital. So I think we will take a lot of time to everything returns to normality. I think everything will come to normality when we don't have this virus anymore, and we can start working again as before. So right now we need to wait, but this is like a pyramid where here we have the people that know Benfica and the clubs. Here you have the people that follow more closely the club. We have the members, and we have the big fans that are members. And we need to try to push as much as we can the people that are down here onto the top. And if we push them, I'm sure we generate much more money in terms of digital with exclusive content, with merchandising, with the new ways to interact with our sponsors and partnerships. Even as we talked before, the virtual reality can give us good income in the future. We never know, because right now we need to reinvent all the process and how people will see the games, because right now we don't have people in the stadium, but we will have more people seeing the games everywhere. So Bundesliga, they are playing already, but you don't have much more leagues that are playing now. La Liga will start, I think, in 8th of June. We will start a little earlier, 5th of June. So we have a good opportunity to enter in new markets that we are not there now, because they, as we know, English Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga are really relevant. And I think we need to take this opportunity, as only Bundesliga is going on. As soon as we start playing again, we need to focus how we will connect with many people that know Benfica and want to see soccer again, want to see what's going on. So we need to think not only in Portugal, but globally, how to connect millions and millions of people and millions of fans that are following us in our PALOP countries, Brazil, also France, Luxembourg, United States, Canada, that are important markets for us. So right now, it's what I can say to her. It's we need to think globally and find new ways to generate money.
Thank you, Cristiano. Andy, I also have a question for you from Kartik Shetty. He's asking, do you think the not so traditional non-esports brands are seeing more value in supporting esports tournaments? And actually, I guess asking also like whether you think that this is pushing traditional football clubs to associate themselves with esports team in the near future, I guess, in order to get back to having those associations with those brands.
Yeah, great question. Two parts to it. So, you know, our ability to put a brand in front of consumers that are very interesting to that brand is probably unparalleled with the level of investment that's going into esports teams from those brands. So, you know, the price to even get some sort of basic match day hospitality at a major sporting event in the UK, and I understand that the UK is different to other markets. It's the one in which I have the most experience. So please forgive me if it's different in other places. But fundamentally, the buy-in price for access to your brand to a Premier League product, particularly, this is not true of the Championship or lower leagues, is pretty high. The conversion rate, the ability for us to offer serve up, number one, that very interesting consumer for brands and so on, and also track the impact of the relationship is high. And so non-endemic brands, endemic brand would be a tech brand, for example, and non-endemic would be a brand like BMW that doesn't have any native association with esports. They're starting to wake up to that, and I think it's about transitioning some of those brands which look at these things inherently conservatively. They have the same concerns about control of their IP, the risks associated with it. So social media is a very risky place for a lot of brands, and you see that in terms of their social media presence. So very often it's a very heavily curated form of their brand. So there'll be product launches, it'll be positive reviews and those kind of things. It's much less anarchic and kind of creative than the brands that really get social media. We're stepping them into that space very gradually. So I would say those non-endemic brands are going to be increasingly interested in esports, and the reason is because it's cheaper in many instances than getting connected into traditional sports. Though obviously the ticket value is starting to go up as more brands get competing in this space and really start to understand the benefits that esports can offer. Can esports bring that piece back for traditional football? I would say that assumes that football clubs are getting into esports for that reason. And I don't think that's the case. I would say that in most instances, they're doing it because they feel like they should do it, and that it's something that they can turn on very quickly and cheaply. And it sort of ticks that box. Okay, what are we doing to, you know, activate the kids who might be interested in our thing? Oh, well, we have an esports team. Okay, fantastic, good answer. I'm not sure if that is a good answer. If you're doing it for that reason, that you're looking for a new platform in which to activate what is already probably an extremely strong brand. So we heard earlier on in relation to, you know, many legacy European clubs, they have these wonderful community roots, and that's definitely true all the way across Europe. They have these wonderful community roots. Sometimes those have not been well watered. Sometimes they've been very well watered, particularly in Spain. But fundamentally, it's about bridging that gap. So I would say if you're in esports for the right reasons, it can be a wonderful way to activate those brands, give non-endemic brands an ability to activate and connect with your fans in a new way, et cetera, et cetera. But again, that assumes that maths has been done, and I don't think that it is.
Great. Thanks, Andy, for your answer. And Pedro, final question for you from Ricardo Teixeira, who is asking, with this digitalization trend, how is the new reality pushing the offer segmentation and targeted activation?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for that. When we're explaining before, no, the branded content packs, basically, when you start to doing this, creating new packs of this, you're already creating a personalization of this, no? Because then you can today we have a standard packs. Now I was explaining an example of, I don't know, whenever you make a goal, you have a pack of this every time. Whenever you create, you have a final result of the match. These are traditional packs. What's happening now in some properties that they are creating, they're being really creative, following probably the eSports, the way they're doing, and create extremely creative packs. So they're able to address different fans, so much more personalized. The second thing that is possible now with the digital is you can go regional, which has already been done in the last years, basically on the sponsorship side. But now on the digital, you can target, because you have multiple accounts on multiple social media channels, basically, that you can address a Brazilian fan because of your account in Portuguese with a different content, rather than global, traditional, more institutional content, or rather than you go a guy singing in Spain. This is the way the target personalization is being doing through the branded content, and that's the way the brands are approaching it. As Andrew said, I agree with this, in a very smart way for the brands and the esports, rather than the traditional sports. They have to move into this direction to be able to personalize, I would say, this content and this commercialization of this content.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you.
Okay, then just maybe to wrap up for all four of you, final thoughts on COVID-19 and innovation, 20, 30 seconds each, because we have run quite over time. Esteban, final thoughts from your side on will COVID-19 boost innovation in football?
Well, something is affecting already and will affect in a deep way. We have to be very responsible with this, but also a very good opportunity to understand new processes, to generate knowledge about information we can be collecting now and new scenario, and from our point of view, use this artificial intelligence in order to generate this knowledge and understand how the future will come, and in next scenarios be more ready.
Thank you. Cristiano, from your side, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think this will boost the innovation in football. Football is a really big industry that moves billions and billions of euros in the world. So I'm sure right now it's the correct time to change some habits and some cultures in the football and in the sports. And I'm sure the innovation will change many things in soccer and in all the sports. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hang on. I would say don't. I mean, football is amazing. I think it's a product that we all love. I've had some of the best sporting experiences of my entire life have been served up by football. A one and only trophy of the last 30 years as a Middlesbrough fan. I was there. But I think this is a great opportunity for football to take a look at itself, I think, and ask about what the future looks like, and ask about where the fans fit into that, where the community activation piece fits into that, and look at how successful some of the community building things that have had to happen during coronavirus to keep football in the public eye. Look at how successful they've been and what you can learn from that. And I think we all hope football comes back better and stronger. But I think what we can all agree is that football may not be the same after it comes back, and trying to make football as it was pre-coronavirus is perhaps the wrong way to look at it. I think it's about learning the lessons of this period and seeing about how we can bring this wonderful game back, perhaps to a more engaging and more engaged place through digital products. So I really hope that happens. I hope football takes that look at itself and takes it as an opportunity to improve and learn.
Great, thanks. And Pedro, from your side, any final thoughts on this last?
Yeah. I think, definitely the situation now is creating acceleration on all this transformation, constantly running. What is going to change definitely is the focus. The focus on monetization, new revenue streams, and creating this, as I said, this digital monetization on this side. So created this link to the fan in a different way. Definitely this is a moment of this stoppage. I would say is creating this opportunity for the football, not only for the football, but for the sport in general, but in this case for football, to understand, to look ahead what they're doing on this side, what they're doing on other sports, how we can get this knowledge together to football. And in our case, as we focus on business, of course, on how can I affect my PL directly with new revenue streams. And that's the opportunity to bring this situation.
Great. And with that, gentlemen, it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing those incredible insights with us and with our viewers. Esteban Granero from Olocip, thank you for everything, and good luck also with the playoffs coming up. Cristiano Vieira from Benfica, good luck also with the restart.
Thank you.
Next weekend. Andy, all the best, obviously, in eSports. We hope you continue to boom and develop closely. And of course, Pedro, Mestriner from Horizm, thank you again for sharing some of those innovative technologies with our audience today. And with that, thank you to all of our viewers that have joined us over the past 10 weeks on this webinar series, in which we've tried to give you a little bit of more knowledge and insight on how COVID-19 has been impacting the football industry. Do please follow our social media channels to stay updated with any future developments on our sites, because we might get back into the space after a break. Of course, we'll definitely look forward to getting your feedback on all of that. In the meantime, wishing you all the best, enjoy the football, and stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.